Welcome to 21st Sports, and we're talking the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks in their Week 3 matchup played September 25th, 2016 as these two NFC West Division rivals went at it. And this game was all Seahawks, especially early on. The Seahawks were very dominant in this game on the ground and through the air, as it all started off in the first quarter with a pair of touchdowns by Christian Michael. First a 41-yard touchdown, and that was less than a minute into the game. And then Christian Michael had a 4-yard touchdown run about 4 minutes before the end of the first. So it was 14-0 after one quarter of play. Then in the second, the Niners got on the board with a field goal by Phil Dawson, a 22-yarder that made it 14-3. But then, with about 8 minutes left before halftime, Russell Wilson connects with Jimmy Graham for an 18-yard touchdown pass. And Graham had quite the day. He was really rustling in the ball. And Russell Wilson was having a good day as well, until he ended up leaving in the third. We'll get to that in a moment. But before the end of the second quarter, Steven Hushka hit a 33-yard field goal. And along with that touchdown I just mentioned, that made the score 24-3 at halftime. So it was a rout going into intermission. And then in the third quarter, Russell Wilson would end up leaving the game due to injury. And hopefully it's not too bad, but you never know with those types of injuries. Of course, you can look up on NFL. They'll have more information on that. But in this game, though, in the third quarter, Trevon Boykin ended up taking over, and then he led them to a pair of field goals. Steven Hauschka hit a 33-yarder and a 22-yarder, respectively, in the third to make it 30-3. Then in the fourth quarter, Trevon Boykin hit Doug Baldwin. Baldwin coming down with it for a 16-yard touchdown, and it was 37-3. So it's all Seahawks at this point. Then in the last 8 minutes of the game, the Niners get a pair of touchdowns from Carlos Hyde, both 8-yard touchdown runs. And on the second one, they went for 2, and they actually did get it as Hyde was able to rush it in for the 2 points. So the final score ended up being 37-18. So the Seahawks above 500, they're 2-1, and they're in the driver's seat there in the West, sitting in first place in the NFC West. And the Niners were just what the Seahawks needed to get back into the win column after a tough loss last week. They come up big time here, step up big time on both sides of the ball and special teams. And they had everything firing on all cylinders. But then Russell ended up going down. And you got to wonder, they already were on the verge of having him leave the game because it was such a blowout. And you wondered, if only they had took him out just to play earlier. But that's always something you're going to second guess in hindsight, 'cause hindsight's 20/20, so you really can't fault them at that. But actually, Russell Wilson, if he had actually played the whole game, he might have had 400 yards. Just in the limited time he was out there, he was 15 for 23 with 243 passing yards and a touchdown. And then Trevon Boykin coming in relief, 7 for 9, 65 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Christian Michael, 20 carries for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Doug Baldwin, a huge day, 8 receptions, 164 yards and a touchdown. And Jimmy Graham, 6 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown as well. As those Seattle receivers were playing very physical, coming down with the ball, wrestling away from those Niners defenders. And speaking of the Niners, Blaine Gabbert, 14-25, 119 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have 5 carries for 22 yards, but he was shut down really by the Seattle defense, putting the pressure on him. Carlos Hyde ended up racking up some yards late in the game with those pair of touchdowns as well. He had 21 carries for 103 yards, and as I mentioned, 2 touchdowns. And Smith was their leading receiver with just 3 catches for 35 yards. When we look at the defense for the Seahawks, Sheed had a forced fumble, and Wagner had an interception. And for the Niners, Brooks had a sack, Bowman had a forced fumble, Dorsey had a sack, Ballore had an interception. And the first down's 18-12 in favor of the Seahawks. On third down, Seattle kept moving the chains. 9 of 14, 64% conversion rate for the Seahawks. And for the Niners, 4 of 15, just 26%, as they were getting shut down by that Seattle D. The Niners did go for it once on fourth, and they did convert that one fourth down conversion. Total net yards, 418 for Seattle versus just 254 for San Francisco. And we look at the penalties in this game, not a lot, but 6 against the Seahawks for 50 yards, 4 against the Niners for 35 yards. The Seahawks did lose a fumble in this game. When we look at the red zone, 3 for 6 for the Seahawks, 50%, 2 for 3 for the Niners, 66%. But you see the time of possession, 35 minutes, 57 seconds for Seattle, 24 minutes, 3 seconds for San Francisco. So Seattle just run away with this one, a big victory for the Seahawks. But it's a little bit of bittersweet, especially with the injury to Russell Wilson. Hopefully he has a quick recovery and return, as he is one of the more entertaining quarterbacks to watch. And definitely it's always a sad thing to see anybody get injured. Never want anyone to ever get hurt. But this is a physical game, and that will happen. It happens every week. But with the Niners, it's not looking good for San Fran. Looks like it's going to be a long season. There's still plenty of football left to play, and anything can happen. So we'll see what as things go forward. But right now, things are looking pretty good for Seattle. Although, the question mark of Russell Wilson's health is something that's got to be troublesome. But boy, he can look pretty good coming in, for that limited time. So they might be able to, get things smoothed over there until he can return, Russell Wilson, that is. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Which plays and performances stuck out to you? Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.